The gentlelady yields. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. You've mentioned probably 5 times today the fact that your intel failure to know what was going to happen. There's an old book you need to read. It's called Groupthink. It examines disasters exactly like this in the past. It probably is worthwhile reading because that's what happened, Groupthink. Now, those of us on this committee who served in Afghanistan and Iraq understand that evil still stalks the world. We saw it. And many of my colleagues on this committee served far deeper into Afghanistan and Iraq than I did. But evil still stalks the world. And I've also heard you say several times here about humanitarian assistance. There is an old military, political concept that says military use is a failure of diplomacy. It's the last bastion of it. Well, as expected, Mr. Secretary, this has been an interesting back and forth, as I knew it would be. And since I'm fairly low on the totem pole here, we've plowed that ground well. I want to talk about the consequences of this in the world following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talked about repercussions. There have been many. I'll just mention 2. Following this botched withdrawal and the Taliban takeover, our adversaries have been on the march around the world, encouraged by this error, this strategic error. Words fail to capture the magnitude of the consequences that have been suffered across the globe because of this withdrawal. Yet, according to President Biden himself, the emergency evacuation that cost 13 American service members' lives left behind $7 billion at the low end of military equipment was an extraordinary success. Yet our perceived weakness following Afghanistan, I think it was 2 months later, Putin started moving troops toward Ukraine, also set the scene for the horrific attacks on October 7th. Hamas terrorists and thugs obviously invaded Israel in an unprovoked assault that left Israeli men, women, and children dead, wounded, and hostage, and Americans as well, I might add. That was a critical, unforced error by Hamas. Since that day, Iranian hegemony has faltered. Hamas has lost its leaders and uncontested control over Gaza, while Hezbollah's senior leadership has been eradicated, setting their ambition back for decades. And I will stop here and say that both UNRWA and UNIFIL did not do their job in Gaza and in southern Lebanon, to disastrous consequences. We now find ourselves in the midst of yet another serious issue, which is Syria. The fall of Bashar al-Assad, both Russia and Iran have lost leverage in the Middle East, and while it's good that his reign of terror is over, gassing, torturing, slaughtering thousands, there's still looming questions like who's keeping the lights on in Syria today, and who's going to control the levers of government tomorrow? Amid the chaos, our steadfast ally, Israel, remains strong. They have significantly weakened Hamas and Hezbollah, directly diminishing Iran's influence in this region. Without Israel's chutzpah and determination, the threats to the United States in the Middle East would be far greater. Israel, over the past few days, has done the necessary work of destroying the military power of rump Syria. So whoever does emerge to rule Syria cannot threaten Israel. According to the White House National Security Council spokesman, John Kirby, it is an open question who is currently running Syria. Yes, Iran and Russia have failed, but have lost influence in the area, but I am very eager for the leadership of the incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. And I want to make sure that's Mike Waltz, the incoming National Security Advisor, not our recently failed Vice President candidate. So, a couple of questions for you. First of all, Mr. Secretary, are you confident that the leader of HTS will be able to keep his word to protect Christians and Islamic women in rump Syria?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not confident. I'm encouraged by the fact that they've said the right thing, but what we have to focus on is whether they do the right thing, including protecting minorities.
The second question is, do you expect Syria to descend into a terrorist enclave?
We certainly need to do everything possible to avoid that. And the coming days, the coming weeks will be critical to that. That's why, and by the way, I very much appreciate you keeping this hearing on time along with Chairman McCall. I need to leave to get on a plane to go to the region to see King Abdullah of Jordan. And I appreciate that there's some other members here who've not yet had a chance to ask questions. I'm happy to take those questions for the record and get back to you quickly.
Mr. Secretary, I yield back to the chairman, and he will recess